friends, it's me, again, your friend, Mr. Plays, or whatever you know me as. Anyway, I'm sick right now. I was gonna be more energetic. I was gonna use my camera that I only use for a few things. But instead, I'm going to do most of this through audio. Recorded on my computer. So yeah. Before I actually explain stuff in real thing for history and stuff, let me just explain it in my own words instead of reading off of an article about the past from a reliable source and stuff. One I'm not so sure is a reliable source, but the other I'm pretty sure is, because, yeah. In case you didn't know from the title and, like, the thumbnail, if there even is a thumbnail, is, the question to answer here is, why is Quebec predominantly French-speaking? That's quite the question. Especially for me, because I am Canadian. Either way, to explain it in my own words, my own way, it's like a simple process when you try and talk about it easily, but when you actually try and talk about it realistically, it's a way longer process than you think. But basically, it's, hey, look, here's French people in Canada. Britain wants to take over Canada. So they do that, and then they end up starting a war with the French.
Oui.
Oui, oui.
No, can't get over
there. And then probably gonna put some explosion meme in there. The war, the little tiny war between the two, which is actually a bigger war, it turns out to be a part of a really, really long war. Lasts 7 whole years. Whoa! And then when that's over, French people are allowed back in Quebec. Now, I have representations here, funny things, so I'm just gonna play them all in succession, because I want to get to, like, the thingy. So yeah, this is the first audio recording then. Oui, oui, it is a good day to exist. Not today, mate. Oh no, this is not wee wee. Ah, take that, mate. Oh wait, I'm standing right next to it.
there.
got chaos at our front doorstep. We're not built to deal with this, man.
Go. Evacuate everyone. I can take care of this. Sir? You might want to come look at this. I'm getting chaos readings at 10.6. It's coming from the museum. My god. It's over 9? Yeah. I'm leaving this decision up to you, Corporal. Just hit one of those buttons to deal with this pressing situation.
Who's watching TV? Get back to work.
Well, sorry, Chief. I'm going back to work yet,
This one needs narration because it's images, so gonna do this. So this is a map of Canada, right? It's Canada. Now, you're probably like, yeah, Canada's owned by Canada. Well, that's wrong. Canada is actually owned by Britain. But the French used to live here in Canada. But now, since they own it, they kicked out French. But then, because they needed to actually keep it, up and running and all that, they let the French back in. So they said, yeah, we'll come back in. And now they are predominantly French in Quebec, which is where they still are predominantly French speaking. Wow, great explanation.
Hello everyone, I am a Reddit meme YouTuber that would wish to keep anonymous. I am here today in place of Ian to read the articles. Article 1, note, this article is from newcanadianlife.com. Contents, a look at the history of Canada will reveal the reason why Canada speaks French. It was the French that first colonized the land. It was in the city of Quebec that these French colonizers first settled and established large communities. Presently, most of the people that reside in Quebec province speak the French language. It is their official majority language. Thank you for trying Verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Most of Quebec's population speak French. Most of the population speaks French as their first language. Where it all started. It was the French people that first colonized some parts of the Northern American continent. The first of these explorers was Giovanni de Verrazano, who reached the Americas in 1524. This explorer was able to reach Cape Breton in Nova Scotia. It was during his expedition that the portion of land that he reached was named Nova Gallia or New France. Years later, another Frenchman named Jacques Cartier was sent by Francis I. Thank you for trying Verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. King of France to found new lands. This was in the year 1534. In his expedition, Cartier was able to discover the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where he eventually landed and made friends with locals. This was to enable him to go further inside the land. However, the war in Europe prevented him from establishing a permanent colony there. As the years passed by, more and more French people settled in the eastern Canada area. Business and trading were established during the start of the 17th century. And with the increase in the number of settlers, thank you for trying Verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. In the land, more lands were founded, including Acadia and Quebec City in 1605 and 1608, respectively. In 1642, Ville Marie was founded. This city was to be present-day Montreal. Thus, more and more cities in the eastern part of Canada were occupied by the French people. The main occupation of the French settlers in Canada was fur trading. The cities soon prospered because of this trade, which helped establish them further. In 1635, the Jesuits founded a secondary school for children's education in Quebec. It was also the year the Compagnie de Habitants Thank You for Trying Verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Was created. With the creation of this company, the economic and political leaders of the colony were united. At this time, all those who lived in the colony who were non-natives spoke the French language. By the early 18th century, British forces began colonizing eastern Northern American territories. They even entered areas that were already controlled by the French. In 1713, Nova Scotia fell to the British and other French-controlled settlements. 1755 saw the deportation of a majority of the inhabitants who spoke French to England and France. The British were thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Successful in completing the takeover of the land. The Treaty of Paris removed France from the Canadian territory except for some areas near the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Because of the British takeover, the French language was consigned as a lower-rank language. Soon English was spoken in the land, especially when it came to trade and communications. Some educated French people had to learn the English language. They needed to do so. However, some had refused to learn English. They continued to speak only in French. Soon enough, French-speaking people increased in the land. Thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The British had also failed to let the French people imbibe their religion. It soon became evident to them that the only way that they can have peace in the land was to coexist with the French-speaking people. Quebec Act of 1774 was soon passed in Parliament. In this act, the restoration of French civil laws and the recognition of the French religion, which was Catholicism, was enforced. Why does Canada speak French? Montreal. After the British occupation of Canadian provinces, the French people still outnumbered the British settlers. Much thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. As the British wanted the French-speaking population to accept the Church of England, they were not successful. However, they did not have to force their religion onto the French people. The French religion was allowed to be retained through the Quebec Act together with their language. This was how peace was bought. Both the British and the French agreed with the act, and this is the reason why Quebec became a French-speaking province. So, despite many migrations from England, Scotland, Wales, and other parts of Europe, the identity of the French Canadians was kept. Thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. French became Quebec province's official spoken language. It would also soon become the official language of Canada along with English. Now, both French and English are being used in official government communications. Canadian citizens are not required to be fluent in both languages, and not all the provinces of Canada are bilingual. The Official Languages Act of 1969. With the Official Languages Act of 1960, both the French and the English languages became Canada's two official languages. Both French and English were to be used by all federal institutions when they render their thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Services. This act has placed the English and the French language on equal standing in Canada's government. This is despite having more English-speaking people in the whole of Canada. And this is also despite the variety in the French dialects. When the government of Canada offers its services, it has to be in both languages. On the provincial level, Quebec's sole official language is French. New Brunswick, however, is bilingual. In some areas like Manitoba, New Brunswick, and Ontario, services offered by the provincial government are given in French if it is there. Thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. A great number of French-speaking people residing in the area. The three territories of Canada also have French as their official language. But the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms saw to it that all territories and provinces will give primary and secondary education to their official language minorities. Federal political parties greatly supported the Official Languages Act, but the provincial response was not so enthusiastic. In New Brunswick, they had their own Official Languages Act, officially introducing bilingualism. French language services were offered in Ontario in some areas only, while Manitoba, which is a monolingual, thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Anglophone province had to comply with the act. In 1988, the Official Languages Act of 1988 was replaced with a new one. This was to help promote the rights of linguistic minorities according to recent developments in Canadian language policy. How the term Canadian French was used historically, Quebec French, and some deviations such as those used in Western Canada and Ontario came to be known as Canadian French. It used to leave out Acadian French, since Acadia and Quebec were in different parts of New France. Today, however, Acadian French is also thank you for trying verbos. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Classified as Canadian French. The common French languages in the Americas were Quebec French, Métis French, and Brayan French. Other French spoken in the region are Acadian French, Newfoundland French, and Cajun French, which are derived from a local dialect in France. French dialects. The French language in Canada has 3 unique but related dialects. These dialects came about because of geographical isolation. These dialects are in no way similar to the French spoken in France. These dialects fall under Canadian French. The first dialect is Quebec French. It is thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Slightly different from the French spoken in Western Canada, Ontario, and Labrador. These dialects are also called Laurentian French but can also be aptly called Quebec French. This dialect is the most used French dialect in Canada. In Newfoundland, the Maritime Provinces, the Gaspe Peninsula, and the Magdalen Islands, Acadian French is spoken. This dialect is spoken by almost 350,000 Acadians. In Western Canada and Manitoba, Metis French is spoken. The Metis people do not only speak French but they also use the Cree dialect. Since both dialects were used, word soon got thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Mixed in a unique language was born which is called Michif. In Michif, there is a combination of Metis French and the Cree language. Today, these 2 languages are endangered. In the Port Peninsula of Newfoundland, Newfoundland French is spoken. However, most people in this place speak more of Quebec and Acadian French than their dialect. In New Brunswick, Edmundston, Maine, and Madawaska, Brayton French is spoken. It is a combination of Acadian and Quebec French. This is due to the mixed population of people from Quebec and from Acadia who have settled in. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The region. Parts of New England in the U.S. use New England French. This French dialect came from Quebec French and is one of the major forms of French used in the United States. Louisiana French and Missouri French are the other forms of French in the U.S. Conclusion. 2 mother nations founded the country we now call Canada, France, and the UK. Before the British conquered the region, it was the French language that was being used in the whole colony. Despite British victory in the colony, the French language was not thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Abolished. It was the Treaty of Paris and the Quebec Act of 1763 and 1774, respectively, that provided the continuation of French civil laws, the French language, and the French religion, which is Catholicism. To this day, the Constitution of Canada still carries these provisions. Article 2, Note S. This is from www.thecanadianencyclopedia.ca. Contents. The conquest, la conquête, is a term used to describe the acquisition of Canada by Great Britain during the 7 Years' War. It also refers to the resulting conditions experienced by Canada's 60,000 to 70,000 French-speaking inhabitants and numerous indigenous groups. French forces at thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Quebec City surrendered to British forces on 18 September 1759, a few days after the crucial Battle of the Plains of Abraham. French resistance ended in 1760 with the capitulation of Montreal. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris surrendered New France to Britain. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 introduced assimilative policies that ultimately failed. They were replaced by the provisions of the Quebec Act of 1774. Although it helped spark the American Revolutionary War, 1775-83, the Act also granted Canadians enviable conditions that resulted in generations of relative stability. The path of glory, the Plains thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Of Abraham, the path of glory, the Plains of Abraham background. The British victory on the Plains of Abraham in September 1759 placed the city of Quebec under British rule. Montreal capitulated the following year. A temporary military regime was set up pending the outcome of negotiations between Britain and France. By the terms signed on 8 September 1760, the British guaranteed the people of New France the following: immunity from deportation or maltreatment, the right to depart for France with all their possessions, continued enjoyment of property rights, the right to carry on thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The fur trade on an equal basis with the British and freedom of religion. With the Treaty of Paris, signed on 10 February 1763, the colony of New France became a British possession. Shortly thereafter, Britain's newly acquired territories were politically organized through the Royal Proclamation of 1763. British administration. Under the policies laid out in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, the governor became the authority in the new province of Quebec. The governor was appointed by the British government and subject to its directives. English criminal and civil law replaced French law. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The imposition of the oath of allegiance for public employees excluded Catholics from public positions. These seemingly assimilative policies quickly clashed with the realities of a French Catholic society. British governors were the first to renounce these policies. This was reflected in the provisions of the Quebec Act in 1774. The British Parliament expanded the area of the province of Quebec, re-established French civil law and authorized the collection of tithes. These changes allowed them to win the acceptance of the country's ruling classes, namely the Catholic clergy and the seigneurs. Acceptance of British thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Rule history is filled with military conquests that were never accepted by the conquered and which gave rise to ongoing resistance, violent or otherwise. The British conquest of New France, however, did not kindle staunch resistance in Canada. The 7 Years' War had been long and difficult and was accompanied by vast destruction. The conquest brought a degree of peace and stability that had long been absent. It was therefore relatively well accepted by those who were subjected to it. In the early 20th century, and Siegfried wrote that rarely had foreign domination been so completely thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Accepted by those subjected to it. A number of factors contributed to this. New France was conquered, but also abandonment occurred as well as conquest. France could have tried to win Canada back through diplomatic negotiations. After all, it had done so following Sir David Kirk's conquest of Quebec in 1629, even though this involved giving up its West Indian colonies. But with the Treaty of Paris in 1763, France chose to abandon Canada. This was mainly because the colony had cost more than it had returned. France also made thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. No subsequent attempt to regain Canada. Even at the height of his power, Napoleon shed the last piece of the French Empire in America by selling it to the Americans in the form of a Louisiana Purchase. This total retreat by France was emotionally difficult for its colonial subjects to accept. It forced Canadians to come to terms with the existing balance of power. Absence of nationalism. The conquest took place prior to the French Revolution, 1789-99, and before the birth of the concept of nationalism. The 18th century was a period when monarchs exchanged territories thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Like commodities, nations define themselves by religion and common allegiance to a sovereign, not by the language or culture of their inhabitants or by the social and political affiliations that came with it. In the capitulation treaties of Quebec and Montreal and the Treaty of Paris, not a single word was mentioned about the French language. However, these treaties did guarantee the free exercise of religion. The Catholic perspective. The conquered community of Canada was Catholic. The clergy were among the few leaders who remained after the French merchants and colonial administrators had thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Left. In the years after the French Revolution, 1789-99, many Canadians saw the conquest as a divine rescue from evolutionary chaos, an idea that was long influential. Later generations also tended to see the conquest positively as it led to religious tolerance and representative government. The church was well treated by the conquerors and thus preached respect for the established authority. This was true even in difficult times, such as during American invasions in 1775 and 1812, as well as the 1837 rebellion and the 1917 conscription crisis. However, Canadians were less welcoming of the thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Ethnic dualism that came from introducing British government and immigration into an established French colony. Guy Carleton, 1st Baron Dorchester. Guy Carleton, 1st Baron Dorchester. Lord Guy Carleton was largely responsible for the Quebec Act, which helped to preserve French laws and customs. Courtesy Library and Archives Canada/C, 2833. Courtesy Library and Archives Canada/C, 2833. Improved conditions under British rule. The final years of the French regime were marked by widespread corruption and many unpleasant memories. The conquest actually resulted in a peace that New France had hardly known. The conquerors also granted thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The conquered conditions that were enviable by the standards of the time. Among the British, there were two competing perspectives on how to handle the conquest: impose there you can reinforce the conquest, or offer concessions and make life under British rule more acceptable to Canadians. The former attitude, which prevailed in Ireland, was evident in the Royal Proclamation of 1763, in the form of the Oath of Allegiance and the imposition of British civil law. It would also resurface in the Durham Report in 1839. However, this approach always failed. For example, the thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. English unilingualism that was imposed following the Durham Report was abolished only a few years later. The latter view was evident in the attitudes of the first governors, James Murray and Guy Carleton, and found legal expression in the Quebec Act of 1774. The Quebec Act was an exceptionally liberal measure at the time, in that it granted Canadian Catholics a freedom that British Catholics did not obtain until 1829. This measure, which rallied clergy and seigneurs to the British Crown, had its origin in the apprehended rebellion of the American colonies. Canadians refused thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. To join the American Revolution. If they had, it is doubtful they would have survived total Americanization. British military strength was long viewed as a guarantee against American invasion. The conquerors also brought with them new ideas that constituted real progress. It was as a conquered people that French Canadians were initiated into the more advanced systems of parliamentary democracy and criminal law. Those seeking a more democratic political regime from the British governors cited England as an example to follow. This vision would predominate in French Canada until the early 20th century, after which the perspective thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Changed. Murray, James. Murray, James. Portrait of General James Murray, by an unknown artist, circa 1770-80, oil on canvas. The Ingulsa merchant said Murray, the first governor of the province of Quebec, recalled. The dispute centered on the application of British law and the creation of an assembly. Courtesy National Portrait Gallery. Courtesy National Portrait Gallery. French-Canadian nationalism. In the 20th century, French Canadians resisted the notion that they were obliged to take part in defending the British Empire. The Boer War and the 1917 conscription crisis caused them to thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. See Britain as a threat rather than a security against the decreasing threat of American expansionism. Britain's treatment of francophone minorities outside Quebec also suggested that British tolerance stopped at the Quebec borders. The British Empire declined after 1918 and particularly after 1945, when the church's hold over Quebec society also began to loosen. See Quiet Revolution. The perspective implied by the motto Jimmy Salvines. And Sula Liz, J. Grandi Sula Rose, I remember. Born under the lily I grew, up under the rose. Gradually faded. In its place arose a pessimistic reading of thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. French-Canadian history. The conquest came to be seen as a catastrophic event responsible for a long decline that would only be rectified by independence. See French-Canadian nationalism. Legacy and significance. Some modern historians, such as Michel Brunet, have seen the conquest as a disaster for French Canadians. Brunet pointed to the monopolization of the higher levels of government and business by English-speaking newcomers as evidence that the conquest made French Canadians second-class subjects. Others, such as Fernand Wellet, have downplayed any harmful effects, pointing to a fairly continuous development of economic foundations, institutions and culture. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. For the indigenous peoples, the end of Anglo-French hostility meant a fateful decline in their importance as allies and warriors, making them increasingly irrelevant to white society. The conquest remains a subject of debate. Its influence is also evident in the American Revolutionary War, which was possible only when the American colonies no longer needed British protection from French forces in North America. Article 3, Note S. This is from www.thecanadianencyclopedia.ca. This is the plain language summary. Contents. The 7 Years' War, 1756-63, was the first global war. In North America, Britain thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. And France fought each other with the help of indigenous allies. At the end of the war, France gave Canada, Quebec, and Isle Royale, Cape Breton, to Britain, among other territories. This is the reason that Canada has a British monarch but 3 founding peoples French, British and indigenous. This article is a plain language summary of the 7 Years' War. If you are interested in reading about this topic in more depth, please see our full-length entry 7 Years' War. 7 Years' War, map. 7 Years' War, map. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The 7 Years' War, 1756-63, was the first global war. It was fought in Europe, India and North America. In Europe, Britain, Prussia, and Hanover fought against France, Austria, Sweden, Saxony, Russia, and Spain. In India and North America, Britain fought against France. One of the main causes of the war was the competition between France and Britain for colonies and trade. In North America, both Britain and France had indigenous allies. The French and their allies won some important victories early in the war. They won battles at Fort Oswego, located on Lake Ontario, and thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. At Fort William Henry, located on Lake George. For a while, France had complete control of the Great Lakes. In 1758, however, the British and their allies began to win the war. That summer, the British captured Louisbourg, Cape Breton. This was a very important victory. The French fort at Louisbourg had prevented the British from entering the St. Lawrence River. Now, the British could sail down the St. Lawrence and attack Quebec. In August 1758, the British also destroyed Fort Frontenac, Kingston, Ontario. In January 1759, the British Navy captured the island of Guadeloupe. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. In the Caribbean. In July, they won a victory at Fort Niagara. They now control the entire Niagara region. Then, in September, the British and their indigenous allies won a key victory on the Plains of Abraham, located in Quebec City. 1 year later, the British and their indigenous allies won yet another important victory in Montreal. This victory effectively ended the war. France no longer wanted to continue fighting. In 1763, France and Britain signed the Treaty of Paris to formally end the 7 Years' War. France gave control of Isle Royale, Cape Breton, Canada, Quebec. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. The Great Lakes Basin and the east bank of the Mississippi to Britain. Britain gave Guadeloupe back to France and allowed France to keep the islands of St. Pierre and Miquelon, located on the St. Lawrence River. Thanks to the Treaty of Paris, Britain became a leading colonial power in North America. The 7 Years' War had a big effect on Canada. There are two main reasons why. North America had both English and French settlers. At first, Britain wanted the French settlers in Quebec to adopt English customs. Laws were written in English, and thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Catholics, who mostly spoke French, weren't allowed to have government jobs. After a few years, the British realized that this wasn't working. In 1774, they created a law, called the Quebec Act, which gave people in Quebec freedom of religion and the right to use some French laws. This was the beginning of Canada as a legally bilingual and bicultural nation. The war also changed the relationship between Britain and Indigenous peoples living in what would become Canada. After the war, the British King, George III, made a new law, called the Royal Proclamation of 1763. This thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. Law said that any land that Britain didn't control in North America belonged to the indigenous people who lived on it. Indigenous peoples could keep those lands unless they wanted to sell them to the king. This meant that only the British government could buy land and make treaties with indigenous nations. This law is still an important part of the government of Canada's relationship with indigenous peoples today. The 7 Years' War is an important event in the early history of Canada. This war helped to create Canada as we know it today. Thank you for trying verbose. This recording will go away once the product has been purchased. I hope you enjoyed my part. Goodbye. See you next time. BTW, this is the end of the video.
Hello my friends, it is me, Mr. Plays, but from the future. Future here seems pretty much the past for you. Am I talking to the future? Yeah, the future is pretty cool. I'm still sick though, and that is sad. So yeah, let's talk about Halloween specials.